Well, speaking of challenges, Joe Biden seems to be a little challenged about the debt ceiling. In talking to people from the press, you get the impression that even though he's supposed to be the one responsible for and dealing with the budget negotiations, the debt ceiling negotiations, he may not be that familiar. Watch.
This side of the equation, they came along and said initially, it's hard to determine where they are, quite frankly. And I don't know, you all may know more from questioning him than I do.
They know more than I do. He's the president. Even if that's true, I don't think it was probably wise for him to get up and announce that his staff and the people running around under him know a lot more about it than he does. Boy, that gives you confidence, doesn't it? Peter Doocy, Fox News reporter who covers the White House, is obviously not one of Joe Biden's favorite people in the White House press room. And he asked a very impolite question of Joe Biden as to whether Joe will get blamed if the debt ceiling debate goes south.
Mr. President, on the debt limit, you said already, I've done my part. Do you think that if there is a breach, nobody's going to blame you?
Of course, no one will blame me. I know you won't. You'll be saying Biden did a wonderful job. I know you.
Would you be blameless in a default situation?
On the merits, based on what I've offered, I would be blameless. On the politics of it, no one will be blameless.
There's one thing that Joe Biden is seeming to forget through all of this. Joe Biden had over 100 days to sit down with Kevin McCarthy and or any other Republicans and say, let's negotiate this debt ceiling. We see it. It's coming. It's coming soon. Let's go ahead and talk about it. Let's work this out. But he didn't. He didn't make a call. He didn't host a meeting. McCarthy made many appeals to meet with the president. The president ignored him until he comes back from this G7 meeting in Japan, and he says, oh, by the way, yeah, we got less than a week to get this resolved. We better meet. But here's a big fact that I hope hasn't been lost on you. It was several weeks ago when the House of Representatives passed a debt ceiling bill. Okay? They didn't just talk about it. They didn't even just put something on a piece of paper and say, this is a proposal. They passed a bill. So it's now voted upon. The Senate hasn't passed anything. They haven't even proposed anything. And the White House has not put on the table anything specific other than we want it our way. Only the House Republicans have actually done something. And yet they've been rebuffed at every turn by this White House. One of the things in the proposal of the Republicans is that some of the savings would come from no longer paying people to be on welfare who were able-bodied and who could work and who had no dependents, but basically were getting up at the crack of noon and enjoying some significant couch time. Kevin McCarthy says time for that to end.
When you talk about work requirements, remember, we want to take from people from poverty to jobs. We want to take, it's only for people who are able-bodied with no dependents. I don't think it's right that we borrow money from China to pay somebody that has no dependents, able-bodied, to sit on a couch. What we find is people become more productive.
So that's still a red line for you?
Every study has shown it helps the economy, helps people, and it helps our supply chain, make us less dependent upon China.
I'm just amazed. The reporter wanted to argue with McCarthy. It's like, no, we should have people sitting on the couch. We ought to borrow money from China and pay people who are doing absolutely nothing. I don't understand how anybody thinks that working Americans should be partly responsible to pay for those who do not work, who could. We're not talking about people who are physically incapacitated, nor people who have a dependent at home and maybe can't realistically go out and take a 40-hour-a-week job. Now, we're talking about somebody who could go to work, has no dependents at home. They just don't want to. They just don't want to, because playing video games, sitting on the couch, eating Cheetos is just more fun than going to work. Well, gee, a lot of us never thought of work as just something that was fun. It was something that we felt morally obligated to do to take care of ourselves and our families. And I think McCarthy is right, and I hope he sticks to his guns on this. Speaking of guns, there's a guy in Memphis, he's a Democrat congressman named Steve Cohen, one of the most vile people that ever got elected to the House of Representatives. He's absolutely a disgusting person, and he said just hateful things. I don't know if you remember, but he was the guy that brought in a bucket of chicken to the House committee and sat there and licked his fingers eating chicken one time. There's the picture of it. He's really a disgusting person. He once got onto Star Parker, who is an extraordinarily gifted and accomplished African-American female who once was on welfare and a dependent and on drugs and had an abortion, came to realize that was a dead-end life. She became a Christian believer. She got to work. She got a college degree. She started a program that is now making it possible for people to get off welfare, helping them to become productive. And he called her some of the most vile names in a committee meeting. And I thought, if any Republican ever said that to a woman in general and to an African-American woman in particular, they would have been drummed out of the Congress. Well, here's what this goon gas bag had to say this week about the Republicans. Watch this.
It's going to be difficult for President Biden to negotiate with somebody who has those type of legislative terrorists on their team, and the 14th Amendment is an ace in the hole.
No, it's not an ace in the hole, and I'm going to tell you something. It is not being a terrorist, as he describes Republicans, because they think there ought to be work requirements to be able to get a government check. Now, that's something people could weigh in on. They could send us what their thoughts on that. Do you think people who are able-bodied and have no dependents should still collect a check from you, the taxpayer, or should they have to go to work in order to get any government assistance? If you've been enjoying our live stream today, please subscribe to the channel. We have said this before, but we're getting closer and closer to 1 million subscribers. 1 million. And about 2 out of 3 of you watching right now, you haven't hit the subscribe button yet. And if you did, we would be at 1 million within days. That might crash YouTube.
Highland Homestead is asking, why are these people in Congress?
Because they get elected. And the reason they get elected is because they have people in their districts who probably have no clue as to how worthless they are. They get money because they're there. I really want to see term limits come. The only way you'll get rid of a guy like Steve Cohen or Hank Johnson down in Atlanta, who thinks Guam is going to tip over because you got 10,000 soldiers positioned there. Some of that's embarrassing.
All right.
But it never changed unless we get different people in office. Hey, thanks for sticking around. Since you made it here to the end, that must mean you liked the video. So you might as well subscribe and hit that notification bell below. But if you really hated it, just click the like button 3 times.